Hello and welcome back to our study of A Course in Miracles. I'm Danny Spendlove, and today we are in Chapter 3, Section 6, Judgment and the Authority Problem. I'm really excited for this one. I hope you're excited. Prepare for another mind shift. Paragraph 1. We have already discussed the last judgment, but in insufficient detail. And if you recall the section on the Last Judgment, the meaning of the Last Judgment was Chapter 2, Section 8. And it is the video that I said that if any of my videos went viral, I hoped it was that one because it's just such a mind shift from how I have always heard the Last Judgment described. And so this is saying that even though we already discussed the Last Judgment, it was in insufficient detail. And I think the reason why this is section 6 of chapter 3. So we're well into chapter 3. And why didn't this section come right after the Last Judgment if it's a further expose on judgment? And I think the reason is because we needed these previous sections that clarified perception, like the difference between perception and knowledge, in order to dive a little deeper into judgment and what it means for us truly. Okay, so we have already discussed the Last Judgment, but in insufficient detail. After the Last Judgment, there will be no more. Period. So there will be no more judgment after the Last Judgment. Judgment is symbolic because beyond perception, there is no judgment. So we only have judgment while we're in a state where we're using perception and don't have true knowledge. When the Bible says, quote, "Judge not that ye be not judged," close quote, it means that if you judge the reality of others, you will be unable to avoid judging your own. Paragraph 2. The choice to judge rather than to know is the cause of the loss of peace. I'm going to read that one again. The choice to judge rather than to know is the cause of the loss of peace. So it's a choice. You're choosing to judge. You're choosing to use perception rather than to actually know others. And that is the loss of your peace. Judgment is the process on which perception, but not knowledge, rests. I have discussed this before in terms of the selectivity of perception, pointing out that evaluation is its obvious prerequisite. So in our previous section, section 5, paragraph 7, it says, at every level, perception involves selectivity. Perception is a continual process of accepting and rejecting, organizing and reorganizing, shifting and changing. Evaluation is an essential part of perception because judgments are necessary in order to select. And when we're perceiving, instead of just knowing, we're selecting from all our options and deciding what we think is appropriate or what we think is true or whatever. Judgment always involves rejection. It never emphasizes only the positive aspects of what is judged. Otherwise, you wouldn't need to judge. if all you saw was good, what would there be to judge? So you're always looking at the positive and the negative when you are judging something. And I didn't even finish that sentence before I started talking, so let me read it again. Judgment always involves rejection. It never emphasizes only the positive aspects of what is judged, whether in you or in others. What has been perceived and rejected, or judged and found wanting, remains in your mind because it has been perceived. So even though you've decided to reject it, the fact that you perceived it in the first place means that it's still kind of in your mind. It's still stuck there. One of the illusions from which you suffer is the belief that what you judged against has no effect. This cannot be true unless you also believe that what you judged against does not exist. You evidently do not believe this, or you would not have judged against it. If it doesn't exist, you wouldn't have even perceived it in order to judge against it anyway. So whenever you notice something and you judge against it and you think, oh, it doesn't matter and it has no effect, because I judged against it. Wrong. You perceived it, you made yourself aware of it, and now it's kind of stuck in your head like a little, like a song that you don't like, you know? So just because you judged against it doesn't mean it has no effect. It only has no effect if it doesn't exist for you. In the end, it does not matter whether your judgment is right or wrong. That's discouraging. In the end, it does not matter whether your judgment is right or wrong. Either way, you are placing your belief in the unreal. This cannot be avoided in any type of judgment because it implies the belief that reality is yours to select from. And we can't select reality. Reality is reality. I'm assuming that's what that means. I would love to know if you have different thoughts on that. But I think when we judge, because judging has nothing to do with knowledge. If we knew, if we had true knowledge, we wouldn't need to judge. We would just know. So it's a part of perception. And when we are trying to decide what is right and what is wrong, or what is real and what isn't, what's true and what's false, we are thinking that we get to decide what in reality is real and what isn't. And we don't get to decide what is reality. God already made that and decided that. I think that that's what that means. But again, please comment if you feel something differently. Paragraph 3. You have no idea of the tremendous release and deep peace that comes from meeting yourself and your brothers totally without judgment. When you recognize what you are and what your brothers are, you will realize that judging them in any way is without meaning. I'm going to read that one again. I mean, I'm tempted to read both of them again, but I'm just going to read that second line again. When you recognize what you are and what your brothers are, which are perfect creations, right? You will realize that judging them in any way is without meaning. In fact, their meaning is lost to you precisely because you are judging them. All uncertainty comes from the belief that you are under the coercion of judgment. Okay. I want to talk about this one for just a second. Because how I was raised, we talk about judgment not all the time. I mean, not any more than any other thing, I guess. But I can't tell you how many times I have heard the phrase righteous judgment. So even though the Bible says, judge not, that ye be not judged, it's almost like, well, yes, that, but we do need righteous judgment. We do need to be able to judge between, like, oh, is this person a good influence or not? Or should I let my kids go to that person's house? So there's all these judgments that have to be made. Judgment is a requirement of us in this life. And so we try and have righteous judgment, instead of unrighteous judgment. Try not to judge others, but sometimes you have to judge others, And so this line just kind of stopped me in my tracks. All uncertainty comes from the belief that you are under the coercion of judgment, that you are required to judge, that you cannot escape judging. The coercion of judgment. And that's where all of our uncertainty comes from. And I had this example come to my mind of what if a friend of yours pulled up and said, hey, I'm going to go rob a bank. Will you come with me and help me? And of course, our thought is, well, I would judge, right? And I would say, robbing a bank is a bad idea. I don't want to go to jail. And even if we were successful and didn't get caught, morally, I just believe that's wrong. Like we would make those judgments and say, no, sorry, I'm going to pass. I mean, most of us, maybe some of you watching would take them up on that. But for the most part, most of us would pass on that because we would judge against it. What if you didn't judge? And what if you just kind of tuned into the Holy Spirit and said, Should I do this? And what if the Spirit said, yeah, get in the car? And you're like, okay, I'm not going to judge. Spirit saying get in the car. So you get in the car with your buddy, and somewhere along the way, you have a conversation or something like that. You end up convincing your friend that, there are better ways to make a buck than robbing a bank. And but not from a place of fear or judgment, just like you feel inspired to say certain things and they feel inspired to listen to you, and in the end you don't even end up robbing the bank. But if you had made that initial judgment and decided, oh, this is bad, I'm not going to get in the car, I'm not going to participate in this, then none of that would have happened. Maybe your friend would have tried to rob the bank on their own, got caught, spent decades in jail. I don't know how long people spend in jail for robbing banks. But anyway, do you see what I'm saying? Like, what if we could just release all judgment? We didn't look at people and go, oh, I think you're a sketchy person. What if we could be so in tune with the Spirit that without any judgment at all, we could just be like, here's the decision I have to make. What should I do? And there's actually, chapter 30. Chapter 30, oh my gosh, that's another one that I would love to go viral. The very first section of chapter 30, and that'll jump a little more into what I'm talking about now. So you have no idea of the tremendous release and deep peace that comes from meeting yourself and your brothers totally without judgment. So we're just robbing ourselves of peace when we think we have to judge. Okay, you do not need judgment to organize your life, and you certainly do not need it to organize yourself. In the presence of knowledge, all judgment is automatically suspended, and this is the process that enables recognition to replace perception. So I know this is saying like, oh, once we have knowledge, you won't need judgment anymore. And you're like, well, until I have knowledge, then I probably still need judgment. But when it was talking in earlier sections, this is just coming into my head now, so sorry I don't have those pulled up. But it talked about how there's right-mindedness and there's wrong-mindedness, or there's true perception, which isn't knowledge. You still don't know, but you're at least perceiving correctly. And so I think what I described in my little bank robber example is an example of true perception. You don't yet have knowledge. You don't know everything yet, but you're allowing Christ or the Spirit to guide your perception without judgment, with as little judgment as possible. So there's that. Paragraph 4. You are very fearful of everything you have perceived, but have refused to accept. So again, remember that what has been perceived and rejected or judged and found wanting remains in your mind because it has been perceived. So now this is going back to that and saying, you are very fearful of everything you have perceived, but have refused to accept. You believe that because you have refused to accept it, you have lost control over it. This is why you see it in nightmares, or in pleasant disguises in what seem to be your happier dreams. Nothing that you have refused to accept can be brought into awareness. It is not dangerous in itself, but you have made it seem dangerous to you. And I wonder if this is referring, like in its extreme, I wonder if this is like when people go through a really traumatic event and they suppress it. They don't remember it until something triggers it later. So nothing that you have refused to accept can be brought into awareness, but you may have dreams about it, or you may, like it may kind of be there in the peripheral and you're afraid of it because you feel like it's dangerous. You feel like you can't control it because you have chosen to reject it. And we often try and reject the bad things. And this just dropped in my head too. This is why I like teaching A Course in Miracles, because just reading through it, I didn't have half of these ideas that we're talking about right now. It's as I'm explaining it to others that things start to drop in of like, oh, and here's this connection, and oh, here's this connection. When I was reading Cleaning Up Your Mental Mess, which I talked about in another video as well, it's a book by Dr. Caroline Leaf. And she talks about how our negative, toxic thoughts, we may suppress them, we may prevent, we may be really good at thinking positive, but those negative beliefs we have about ourselves are still doing damage in our brain. And she had brain scans and had like studies where they can measure the damage that is being done in your brain because of toxic beliefs. And just because you're not consciously aware of them or you're not allowing them to come to the surface doesn't mean they aren't there. And it shows up in your body through symptoms of anxiety or depression or physical diseases and things like that. That if you can clean up your mental mess, if you can clean up those negative toxic thoughts, then your body starts to recover as well. So your body begins to show the symptoms of the toxic or negative beliefs that you have, even if you don't allow yourself to be consciously aware of them because you're suppressing them. You're refusing to accept that those things are real, or that you actually, because they aren't real, like the toxic and negative, it's not real, but you still believe in it. Even though you're trying not to believe it, there's still a part of you that does believe it. So until you heal that, you're going to have these symptoms showing up in your body. Okay. Paragraph 5. When you feel tired, it is because you have judged yourself as capable of being tired. When you laugh at someone, it is because you have judged him as unworthy. When you laugh at yourself, you must laugh at others, if only because you cannot tolerate the idea of being more unworthy than they are. All this makes you feel tired because it is essentially disheartening. You are not really capable of being tired, but you are very capable of wearying yourself. The strain of constant judgment is virtually intolerable. It is curious that an ability so debilitating would be so deeply cherished. So, making yourself weary. And that's fascinating to me because I am someone who is pretty low energy. I'm not a go, go, go type. I love to sit and read and journal and meditate and study. And I'm not like a highly active type. So I often feel tired. And so when this says that you are not capable, like technically we are not capable of being tired, but we can weary ourselves. And I feel like there might be a difference here because when I'm tired and I need a nap, it's not, I really enjoy my naps. I really look forward to my naps. And I actually feel like I accomplish a lot in my naps. I know that sounds weird, but I integrate a lot when I sleep. Like sometimes I'll have a really powerful spiritual experience and then I will be so tired and I just need to sleep. But it's so fulfilling. I don't know how else to describe it. It's fulfilling sleep. And it feels like I'm accomplishing something while I sleep. So it's not that I'm like, oh, I'm just so tired and, like a almost depressed kind of tired. So I think this is saying that all of these judgments, and especially towards ourselves, right? When we're judging that like, oh, I'm not doing enough, oh, I'm not being enough, I'm not worthy, I'm not, like there's so much lack, and we're trying to make up for all of that lack by filling it with action that somehow proves that we are enough. That wearies us. All of this judgment, trying to live up to other people's judgments, that is wearying. That makes us tired. If we are actually doing what we feel inspired to do, even if it is taking a nap like I do, but we don't feel guilty for it, we just embrace, like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing right now. And other people may think I'm being lazy, but I feel like this is what I'm supposed to be doing right now. Then it's not wearying, it's not draining, and it's only because of the judgments, our own judgments, and that we care about the judgments of others, that we allow ourselves to be tired, that we run ourselves down and weary ourselves trying to keep up with the judgments. The strain of constant judgment is virtually intolerable. It is curious that an ability so debilitating would be so deeply cherished. Yet, if you wish to be the author of reality, you will insist on holding on to judgment. You will also regard judgment with fear, believing that it will someday be used against you. This belief can exist only to the extent that you believe in the efficacy of judgment as a weapon of defense for your own authority. Okay, so we have talked before about a two-edged sword. Do you remember that? How it was talking about how the atonement is the only defense that cannot be used as an attack. All of our other defenses are technically a two-edged sword because they can defend, but they can also attack. And the problem with that is that they can be turned against you just as easily as they can be used for you. And judgment is one of those two-edged swords where we think it's a defense and that it's protecting us. But it's a two-edged sword, and so even though we can use it against others to try and protect ourselves, we judge against others, it also gets turned against us, and now we're afraid of judgment because, well, if I judged against these people because they weren't doing enough or they're not good enough or whatever, that's also turned against you. Like, oh, I'm not good enough. Oh, I'm not doing enough. You know, everything we believe about others is technically a reflection of what we believe about ourselves. Paragraph 6. God offers only mercy. Your words should reflect only mercy, because that is what you have received and that is what you should give. Justice is a temporary expedient or an attempt to teach you the meaning of mercy. It is judgmental only because you are capable of injustice. So it's only in this dream world that we are capable of injustice. And so justice right now is basically to just help turn us to mercy, help teach us the meaning of mercy. Paragraph 7. I have spoken of different symptoms, and at that level, there is almost endless variation. There is, however, only one cause for all of them: the authority problem. This is, quote, the root of all evil, close quote. Every symptom the ego makes involves a contradiction in terms, because the mind is split between the ego and the Holy Spirit, so that whatever the ego makes is incomplete and contradictory. So the ego comes from a split mind, so the only thing the ego can make is split and contradictory. It cannot make anything that is whole and complete. This untenable position is the result of the authority problem, which, because it accepts the one inconceivable thought as its premise, can produce only ideas that are inconceivable. And you're like, well, what is the inconceivable thought? The inconceivable thought is what it's going to talk about here in this next paragraph. So, paragraph 8. The issue of authority is really a question of authorship. When you have an authority problem, it is always because you believe you are the author of yourself and project your delusion onto others. So that's the authority problem. You think you created yourself. You don't believe that God created you from his perfection and you are perfect. And then you also project that delusion onto others. You then perceive the situation as one in which others are literally fighting you for your authorship. Which, isn't that so true? Aren't we trying to mold our children to be the way we think they should be? And our friends or our colleagues or whoever are trying to get us to be who they want us to be. You know, like we're all trying to influence each other and get people to behave in the way that we think is correct and right for them. And so we're literally fighting each other for our own authorship because we don't trust that we were created perfect and that there's nothing that needs to be changed. God made us and we're perfect. So all of it stems from that. This is the fundamental error of all those who believe they have usurped the power of God. And if you remember back in, I think, the very first section of chapter 2, and it's talking about, it's titled The Origins of Separation. So how we came to believe that we are separated from God. And it gave the 4 steps. I'm just going to read them again because it's perfect for this. First, you believe that what God created can be changed by your own mind. Second, you believe that what is perfect can be rendered imperfect or lacking. Third, you believe that you can distort the creations of God, including yourself. And fourth, you believe that you can create yourself and that the direction of your own creation is up to you. So, of course, then you would have to judge, right? You're trying to guide the direction of your own creation. And so you're having to judge about what you're creating that is you, right? So, anyway, I think it's fascinating. This is the fundamental error of all those who believe they have usurped the power of God. This belief is very frightening to them, but hardly troubles God. He is, however, eager to undo it, not to punish his children, but only because he knows that it makes them unhappy. God's creations are given their true authorship. And authorship here is a capital A. God's creations are given their true authorship, but you prefer to be anonymous when you choose to separate yourself from your author. Being uncertain of your true authorship, again, every time it says author or authorship in relation to God being the author, it's always a capital A. You believe that your creation was anonymous. This leaves you in a position where it sounds meaningful to believe that you created yourself. The dispute over authorship, and this is lowercase a authorship, the dispute over authorship has left such uncertainty in your mind that it may even doubt whether you really exist at all. Paragraph 9. Only those who give over all desire to reject can know their own rejection is impossible. I'm going to say that one again. Only those who give over all desire to reject can know that their own rejection is impossible. You will never be cast off by God. You will never be rejected by your author, by your creator. But you can only really believe that when you give up rejecting others. That's the only way you can know that for sure. You have not usurped the power of God, but you have lost it. Fortunately, to lose something does not mean that it is gone. It merely means that you do not remember where it is. Its existence does not depend on your ability to identify it, or even to place it. It is possible to look on reality without judgment and merely know that it is there. And what I think this is saying, and I could be wrong, so I'm totally open to your perspective, is that last line when it says it is possible to look on reality without judgment and merely know that it is there, and it's talking about how we've lost the power of God. But fortunately, to lose something does not mean that it is gone. It just means that you don't know where it is. You don't remember where it is. Its existence does not depend on your ability to identify it or even to place it. So I think that if we can attempt to release judgment, and even though we have misplaced the power of God that is ours, we can still trust that it's there. Even though we can't see it exactly, we can't recognize it yet, we can't identify it or even place it, we just trust that it's there. And don't judge of like, oh, well, if I had the power of God, I'd be able to do this or that, or, whatever. Like, we don't judge ourselves for being weak or, what we perceive as weak. We just trust, we release judgment and trust that the power of God is in us, even though we can't identify it yet. Isn't that kind of a beautiful thought? Like, I think that's probably what surrender truly is. We surrender judgment, especially of ourselves, which then will allow us to not judge others. and just trust that the power of God is in us and we will be directed in how to use it when we need to use it. I could be wrong, but that thought makes me happy, so I'm going to go with that for now. Paragraph 10. Peace is a natural heritage of spirit. Everyone is free to refuse to accept his inheritance, but he is not free to establish what his inheritance is. So you can't change your inheritance. You can refuse to accept it, but you can't change it. And peace is the natural heritage of spirit. That's your inheritance. The problem everyone must decide is the fundamental question of authorship. All fear comes ultimately, and sometimes by way of very devious routes, from the denial of capital A authorship. The offense is never to God, but only to those who deny him. So you're not offending God when you deny your authorship. It doesn't concern him. He knows he's your author. He knows that you can't change it even though you think you can. He's just patiently waiting for you to be ready to accept your true authorship so that you can have the peace that comes with that. So the offense is never to God, but only to those who deny him. To deny his authorship is to deny yourself the reason for your peace, so that you see yourself only in segments. This strange perception is the authority problem. So that is the authority problem, is this perception that we are somehow not perfect creations of the creator of perfection and are instead these broken piecemeal beings that are just trying to put themselves back together. There's nothing truly broken, so there's nothing to put back together. Paragraph 11. There is no one who does not feel that he is imprisoned in some way. If this is a result of his own free will, he must regard his will as not free, or the circular reasoning in this position would be quite apparent. So just to explain that circular reasoning, if you think you have free will, but you also believe that you are somehow imprisoned, obviously your will isn't free because you feel imprisoned. So your will is imprisoned. So that's kind of the circular thinking. You can't have free will and be imprisoned. Free will must lead to freedom. Judgment always imprisons because it separates segments of reality by the unstable scales of desire. Wishes are not facts. To wish is to imply that willing is not sufficient. Yet no one in his right mind believes that what is wished is as real as what is willed. Instead of, quote, seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, close quote, say, quote, will ye first the kingdom of heaven, close quote. And you have said, I know what I am, and I accept my own inheritance. So when instead of seeking or wishing for the kingdom of heaven, will it. Your will is the will of God. Like nothing can contradict your will. So if you will for the kingdom of God, then you have basically said, I know what I am, which is a perfect creation of the creator of perfection, and I accept my own inheritance, which is peace. And that's it for this section. Did you love it as much as I loved it? I hope that you loved it. I hope that you comment. I hope that you share some little piece that was like a light bulb moment, or maybe you totally disagree with everything I said, in which case I am open to a discussion, a friendly discussion. And I hope to see you next time.